Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks about. I knew I was going to do that sooner or later. Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Drew Barton and Cam Reel. I thought Caleb Slayton was joining us, but perhaps not. So I guess we'll do things a little bit out of order on here on the script, and we'll start with I was going to ask Caleb where he went in Europe, because I know he was in Europe when the Olympics were going on, so I wondered if he went to the Olympics, but that looks so funny with you there as a shadow. I thought we for a second there, I thought we like, you know, those 60-minute interviews where they disguise the person's voice and only show a silhouette of them. I thought we had one of those interviews coming on here, but it's just Cam Reel. Welcome, Cam. So how are you back? How are you? How are you guys? How are you guys before we jump into the Olympics?
I'm still at school.
Okay.
Setting up.
You're a super senior. You're a super senior where?
Long Beach State. No, man.
It's kind of funny. Actually, no, never mind. I won't tell that story about a Long Beach State coach. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, just, you know, it's the eve of back to school, so last minute grind.
When does school start for you guys? It's like
tomorrow.
August 12th. What?
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Who the hell starts school on August the 13th?
As great feedback, please send that to DSST Public Schools.
Wow. I've never heard, maybe a week before Labor Day, but goodness gracious.
Yeah, man.
I did not realize that. Huh.
Yeah, we have a really short summer, but yeah, students tomorrow. I teach in 3 different rooms, so I'm working on all those things.
Right. And
yeah,
Drew, when do you start? We haven't announced your new job. You've moved on and moved up.
Yeah, so I'm heading to Sonoma State for those hoop fans. That is actually the starting point of Jalen Wells, draft pick of the Memphis Grizzlies college career. He played 2 years there. It's a Division II and the CC2A, which is one of, if not probably the best West Coast D2 conference. So super excited to make the move there. I'll be stepping into the Director of Athletics Communications role there. So more or less the same job, but exciting because I get to, you know, learn those NCAA skills that I need to kind of get to that aspired to Division I level. On top of the fact that it's a little bit more of a consolidated athletic department instead of at Menlo where there's like 16 teams. I'm at a place where there's 11, so I get to focus a lot more on basketball. I'll get to travel with the team a lot more. I probably won't be doing as much basketball operation stuff as I was in terms of like cutting film and whatnot, at least to start. But you know, I'll still be helping the Menlo crew out on the side with that. And when you're the son of a coach, basketball never really is too far from the house. So I actually start officially on Wednesday.
Wow.
So yeah, tomorrow will be my last day with the Menlo. Kind of like Cam, it's the fall check-in date, so all the fall sport athletes will be at Menlo. So I'll be helping kind of get them set up and getting the semester off and running, and then head over to Sonoma on Wednesday.
Do you have to move?
So I'm trying to figure that part out. Sonoma is about an hour from where I'm living right now. So one of the big perks was I get a lot of hoops action, especially because it's the only winter sport they have. So when that rolls around, I'm all basketball all the time. Trying to figure out what moving could look like. They are pretty lenient with the in-office policy. So if it's a situation where I only have to be in, you know, once or twice a week, not including game days.
So you might be able to work some from home.
Yeah, I'll have a lot more work from home freedom with this job, which is what I'm looking forward to. A big part of it is just because, you know, it's a lot of social media, a lot of writing, a lot of website management, and you don't have to be in the office to do that per se. So it's probably going to be mostly like, you know, work from home my office days will be from home, and then I'll be at the school, obviously, for any game days, you know, supervising, you know, whenever the hoops teams play.
Gotcha. All right. So I guess we'll move on to the Olympics and see if Caleb joins us later. So in our little contest, I think we were all pretty much not spot on, not perfect, but Drew was the only person to get all the group winners right. I ultimately ended up with more points because I correctly got Serbia as a bronze medal winner. And I also got 5 bonus points for picking Team USA as my wild card because I actually thought Serbia was probably going to be their most dangerous opponent. And I thought Serbia having more continuity from as opposed to Team USA, being together for a few weeks, as opposed to Serbia really being familiar with each other. But Team USA really clobbered Serbia the first time they played. And I'll tell you, for the first in group play and even the game against Australia in the knockout round, Team Serbia really didn't look. It looked like they still were trying to figure out how to best use Jokic. But in the second half of that game against Australia, and from there on out, the game against USA and in Germany, Jokic, everything clicked for them. And so one thing I wanted to ask you guys is what did you think? Oh, in speaking of our contest, we all got Canada wrong. We had Canada in the silver medal slot. We all got that wrong. Cam came in second because he had France winning a medal. So that's why he finished second. But my one question was that USA Serbia game. To me, I thought on some level Serbia got gypped because I personally saw 3 fouls, and it was all around either in the second quarter or close to the second quarter, where there were defensive fouls called on Serbia and nobody touched the player. I think they were on 3 different people. One was on Jokic. He had a block, and they called him for a foul. He got a clean block. And then LeBron in the third quarter, I believe, ran down the court like a running back with the ball under his arm and took like 2 steps with the ball under his arm. They didn't call walking. And then they called a foul when he got near the paint. Somebody fouled him then. And so instead of it being Serbia ball, it turned out to be USA got to foul and points out of it. And at some point in there, second, third quarter range, the Serbian coach got a technical foul. And it was on something that, I mean, the LeBron thing was the worst. It was the most obvious. But yeah, he got a technical foul on something else. Now we're talking about a game that ended up 4-point difference?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and
super close.
So I personally thought, the refs did not do any favors for Serbia. And yeah, I was a little disappointed by that. I thought that was one of the worst officiated games I had seen in the tournament.
For sure.
So that was my one foremost comment, that I thought maybe Serbia should have been in the gold medal game. But what do you guys think about the basketball tournament? We'll start with you, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the patriotism in my household and probably just was on full display. I think if you are a fan of the game of basketball, regardless of where you rank in the the LeBron GOAT debates and Steph Curry and his all-time ranking, Kevin Durant, how you feel about him, it was really awesome to see those guys suit up. I think for it being Steph's first and probably only Olympics, for Durant to be able to go out and kind of cement himself statistically, at least, as the greatest, American basketball Olympian ever. And for LeBron to, still kind of having started his Olympic career on such a low note to kind of, go out and kind of rewrite that script. It was awesome. I mean, I don't know how you can't watch those last 2 games, especially the Steph Curry performances, and not think that they were absolutely electric. I mean, I say this, hopefully you guys got a little taste of what I've been fortunate enough to experience the last decade, and root for him and see that. I mean, especially, I made the comment amongst some people in the basketball community. I thought Steph was actually pretty bad all the way up through those 2 games. And I think some of it was him trying to figure out, there is some,
Well, no,
deference.
he played well, really well in the first half against Serbia.
Exactly. Like he was up until the Serbian game, and then obviously the game against France, he had been kind of a non-factor. And I think some of that is it's always an Achilles heel for Team USA when you try to compile all this talent in a short window and go, you're having three guys that are pretty much locked into the top 15 of all time, trying to figure out how to play with each other, on top of a cast of all NBA All Stars and all this stuff. So I think that's always a bit of an issue. So that last 2 minutes of the game against France was some of the most electric in the Olympics from Steph. I think that was awesome. And then also, for us, it's probably not as much of a surprise, but I just love seeing these international teams come together and these guys who aren't household names or kind of like for NBA cast-offs or college basketball cast-offs, like kind of come back and like really show up and show out. I mean, Yabusele from France was their best player across the tournament. You know what I mean? I know Wemby had a big game against Team USA, but you can argue from start to finish.
Yabusele was quiet first few games. He didn't get a lot of playing time, but
then he just, Rudy Gobert falls out of the rotation. He gets these minutes.
Yeah, the knockout round, he was incredible.
He was incredible. As a Gonzaga fan, seeing Petrusev, go out there and play and, get a medal, it's really cool. And that's a guy that, people forget that his last year in college was the COVID season when Gonzaga was like 28-1 or something like that. And so it's really cool. I had this conversation with my dad. I just think you see how much it means to these other countries, and not saying that doesn't mean a lot to the Americans, but like when you see a guy like a Rudy Fernandez, like it's over and done, like how much it means to him to be able to suit up. You can't help but be like romantic about that. So it was an awesome tournament. Obviously glad Team USA came out on top. Glad we got to see like kind of probably the three best players of my generation kind of ride off into the sunset together. You can't write a better storybook ending than that.
How about you, Cam? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, ultimately this is the most competitive Olympics we've had probably ever. In terms of the level of competition against the U.S. team. I don't know. To me, it's just, I really enjoy seeing all the different styles of play. I really enjoy, sort of the underdog stories of, Japan being frisky in group play and South Sudan giving teams more of a competition than really people thought. That was probably my favorite aspect. It was good to see, the French team sort of pull things back together after a really rough FIBA last year. But man, I'll tell you that the world is catching up. We're talking about officiating in a game between Serbia and the US. And realistically, beyond the officiating, there was only a 2 free throw discrepancy. Serbia shot 38.5% from three and the US shot 50. If Steph doesn't get super hot in the first half, Serbia probably goes on to that game. And we, see a star-studded U.S. team not even make, the championship round. So I don't know. I love the level of competition. I loved, all the different, aspects of play from really different styles around the world. And I just thought it was a great showcase for just how high the skill level is right now around the world.
Right. With, Brazil, they really don't have a ton of new blood. Spain doesn't seem to have a ton of new blood. Australia's got a lot of young guys, but they don't really have a go-to scorer, so they're still relying on Patty Mills. So I think, right now the 5 best teams in the world look like Serbia, USA, Canada, France, Germany. Lithuania too, I think, could be very dangerous if they have all their guys available. But I was just curious, out of Serbia, Germany, and France, if they played right now, if the tournament was still going, who do you think would win a round robin out of those 3?
Just this year, right now.
Yeah, right now.
Okay. Because I was going to say down the line, France has a ton of guys coming up.
Right. They have a lot of youth in the pipeline where the other 2 don't seem to have a ton.
Yeah. And then you could throw Canada in there as well. They got a few guys coming up. But I don't know. I think between those 3, with Jokic, I'm taking Serbia.
Yeah.
If Jokic doesn't play, I would maybe take Germany. I think Germany's got the guard play that France just doesn't quite have.
Yeah, but Germany inside is pretty mediocre.
I really
Yeah,
was
I mean,
they don't have a rim protector for starters.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, they've shown like they can win with the Wagners
Right.
in FIBA, but also too, I mean, the Magic basically play those two as their front court at times, and that's a top 5 defense in the NBA. So I don't know, like, yeah, they don't have great rim protection, but as long as there's not a guy like Jokic in there, I think they're probably okay. And honestly, they're scrappy enough to mess with, Wemby.
They play very good team defense.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, they might
The
be
thing that I love with they play such a high pace offensively, and their defense bleeds into their offense. I think that's where France struggles. Is if they're not just shutting people down and mucking it up in the paint, their offense is usually in such mud that it's hard for them to stay in games.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where they get in trouble against a team like Germany. And then it's where they struggle with a team like Serbia too. Like, they lose a little bit of that defensive advantage with Wemby and Gobert because Jokic is so good. But then on top of that, Serbia just plays incredibly fast.
Right. And they're probably the second best shooting team not beside Team USA. So what do you think, Drew? Who'd win out of if they played a round robin right now between Germany, France, and Serbia?
Yeah, I think I'm with Cam in terms of the ranking. I think I'd go Serbia, Germany, and France. I think France has the most. Like, France is one of those like 2028 teams that's going to be terrifying. I mean, look, we know what Wemby is like, but think of all the guys. They just had the two number 2 picks in the draft, and they didn't play. They've got a lot of young guys that are going to be able to kind of fit that perfect mold of like 6'8", 6'9" guys who are basically play 1 through 5 if you need to. So that's terrifying because they don't have any guard play, and even their wings. I mean, it really was kind of the reason I was low on them was because I really thought it's the Wemby show, and we'll see what Koulibaly has, but. Everyone else is either older.
That's what I said. But Koulibaly was a non-factor. But
It
was guys like Cornier really stepped up.
Exactly. I still think, and this was the reason I took Serbia as my wild card team, is look, they have the apex predator in the world of basketball. It's kind of goofy as Jokic is, and he doesn't carry that same like Kobe Bryant outward mentality. We saw the numbers. I mean, the plus minus when that guy's on the court, they played Team USA to a draw, if not had them down. When he's off the court, they get blitzed, 28-4. He is, I really think, that good. He elevates everybody. I know that Topic, the OKC pick, wasn't out there for them because he was hurt. He's another young guard because I think guard play is where they're a little bit thinner. Yep. We know that they have the size, but it's really Micic and Bogdanovic. And I think Bogdanovic, played second fiddle pretty well to Jokic, had a couple of big games. I know he was John with Carmelo Anthony and might have got Team USA going a little bit, but I would go with Serbia. And then I think that Germany, I think I said this on the last episode, I think if they can get De Silva, Tristan from Colorado, if he ends up getting on this team in a little bit, and I don't know why Isaiah Hartenstein doesn't play. I mean, he is German to my knowledge. I think that would help remedy some of the front court concerns. You go get like a legitimate NBA big out there who would be in a bit of a bigger role. I know he's kind of a plus minus metrics darling in the NBA, so it would be fun to see him in a bigger role. But I think Germany has the guard play. I think Franz Wagner is off. Like, he's really freaking good, and I mean, I didn't see this coming from out of college, but I think he's up there as one of the best international kind of rising guys. So I'd go Serbia, I'd go Germany, and I'd go France. But I think within a year or two, I think France is going to probably get up there once those young guys, get up to speed.
I agree with both of you on the order. We got to remember this was played in France. So, Germany and France met twice in the tournament. Germany won the first time easily, and then France won the rematch. The one thing I would say about Tristan da Silva, when he was on the show last year, he said his dream was to play for the German national team. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing that. I don't think there's much argument that he's better than his brother. So yeah, I think we will see the combination out there. So, obviously there's been a ton of talk about Yabusele coming over to the NBA. Of course, he played in the NBA before with the Celtics. The thing I didn't like about him, when he was in the NBA, he was just too heavy. And he, for such a big, strong guy, didn't really rebound well. Wasn't really a force defensively in the paint, but his body looks so different now. And I think he certainly could play in the NBA. The other guys I put down on my list, I just want to see if you guys had any others or any guys you particularly really think should be on an NBA team. I had Yabusele, Bruno Caboclo from Brazil, Cornier from France, Isaac. He doesn't actually. He says it Isaac. Is that how he pronounces it? I think he pronounces it Isaac Bonga. Philip Petrusev, Matthias Lazor, Nick Weiler-Babb, and Alexa Avramovich, who I thought was tremendous in this tournament as a pain in the ass defender, and he was a 3-and-D guy. And one player for the Greek team, Kostas Mitiglu, if I'm saying that properly. So I think these are the 9. Was that 9? Yeah, 9 best guys in the Olympics that aren't on an NBA roster. What do you guys think? Any of these guys, you say, no, definitely couldn't play in the NBA, or yeah, definitely could play in the NBA and probably even be a regular?
I mean, I don't know about any of these guys being like a regular. I think if, the NBA, if they were going to be regulars, a lot of these guys I think we'd see. I've always thought Caboclo was a really intriguing prospect. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were calling him the Brazilian Giannis way back when. I mean, he has the build, right? And he's 6'9". He's probably 220 plus. So I think he has the build, and I think he's definitely developed. I mean, he's never been a knockdown shooter. He shot the ball pretty well in the tournament, not at a super high percentage. But I think he was taking like less than 3 a game. But I think Yabusele is going to be the big one that everyone talks about. I mean, he had the big poster dunk, and he just plays hard. He's definitely built his body from just being a thick, big guy to now he looks the part. Still can't shoot. I mean, if he could make a free throw, we might be having a different conversation about that game if he could knock down some free throws and stretch the court. But I think him and Caboclo are the two that, for me, I look at and go, okay, physically, I could see them in the NBA. I can see them working defensively. I could see them finding a role. I think the other guys here all have pretty high level of skill, but I have more questions like physically if they could, survive in the NBA, particularly from like a defensive standpoint. But those are probably my two that I'm most keyed in on.
What do you think, Cam?
I actually didn't see him on your list, Rich, but the guy that stands out to me is from Team Serbia, but Marko Guduric.
Oh,
I really like Guduric.
I didn't put him on because he's in his 30s and he's already been
he's a little older.
Yeah.
I
tried to keep this under 30 or no more than 30.
Mm-hmm. He's just a guy that stood out to me, though, because, talk about really accomplished. He's got 3 Turkish League championships, 2 Turkish Cups, Presidential Cup winner, ABA champion twice, Serbian League champion twice, Serbian Cup MVP in 2017. I don't know, like a older vet that could come in and be a 3-point specialist. I really like him. I think in terms of like younger guys, I like Lasort. I think just an athletic big that can
defend.
He can defend, and that's.
And I actually, Drew and I were talking before the show. We thought that using Lizor more in place of Rudy actually helped the French team play better defense.
Without a doubt.
Because I think Lazor is more switchable.
He's versatile, and against Team USA, you have to be versatile.
Yeah, you have to. And I would also put Bonga and Petrusev kind of on that level as well. It's like,
yes,
just very capable, flexible players.
Bonga is so much of a better shooter than he was when he was in the NBA. So much. And he's still only 24 years old. And this is a guy who's what, like 6'7", who can play point guard. And he can guard multiple positions. And now he's become a damn reliable three-point shooter, especially from the corners.
Yes.
And Petrusev, too, only 24. And we didn't see it in the Olympics, but he can shoot from the outside, if he has to. That's a part of his game that doesn't get utilized, at least in the Olympic level. So, yeah, I agree with you there. I think the Cornier is probably the guy who surprised me the most, but I looked at his European stats, like from last year, outstanding. And he played in EuroLeague along with, let's see, I'll look it up. He played in EuroLeague and the Italian league, which is the top Italian league. So combined, he shot 48% from the field, 36 from deep, 81 from the free throw line. And we know the guy can defend. We know he can create. So he could be, to me, I just always wonder in these situations, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond, or you don't want to be a big fish in a small pond? And personally, I would hate it if I had to sit around for 82 games to play maybe 20 games a year and maybe play in those games, maybe get like 8 minutes. That would drive me nuts. I'd much rather play for less money and be out there every night, and be a part of the team,
And be home. I mean, that's a part for these guys too. Well, you're home too. I mean, if these guys, you're in your backyard, you're probably your own celebrity to a degree, and you're not on the other side of the world. I mean, I know it's but like, I remember when Nikola Mirotic came into the league, kind of surprised everybody, had a really good run with the Pelicans and the Bulls.
Right.
Was, a totally usable, solid rotation, kind of low-end starter in the NBA, was getting minutes and basically was like, yeah, I'm going back to Europe. I'm going to make more money and I'm going to be with my family. Or for him, he made more money, but I'm going to be with my family and I don't have to be over here and be like the 6'7" guy and go be the dude.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, tough example, though, because Bobby Portis did beat the living crap out of him.
Yes, that's fair. Yes.
No, Bobby Portis cheap shotted him. He cheap shotted him and broke.
Not from Bobby Portis's perspective.
Yeah, well, whatever. All right, so we'll wrap up the Olympic talk by just other outside of hoops. Do you have any real fond memories, Drew?
Oh man, I love the Olympics. Track and field is very near and dear to my heart. That's the sport that I participated in growing up, and still run a lot to this day. I thought it was the most dominant showing, I think, ever for USA track and field, top to bottom. I mean, I can go on and on. Quincy Hall's 400-meter race, to come down the turn and be in 5th place, and to basically take everything you know about running, form, stride, and toss out the window and gut out a 400 win, a race that we haven't been the solo Olympic champion in a decade was awesome. Cole Hawker ran the 15th, what I ran.
How about the Swedish pole vaulter who went for the world record? Just missed the world record.
I think track and field was probably like historically dominant from a Team USA standpoint and just performance standpoint. So really enjoyed that. Swimming's always fun to watch. I enjoy swimming as someone who's done it and someone who likes watching it. It's always amazing to see like a Katie Ledecky literally swim 30 laps in a pool and be so far ahead of everybody. So I think the Olympics are awesome. It puts a lot of spotlight and a lot of shine on athletes that don't get it. And so, I mean, I could sit back and watch Olympic action all day. I mean, I got really into field hockey, and I think my non-American team that I was rooting for was the Indian field hockey team, because their goalie had the single best nickname. His nickname was literally the Wall of India was his nickname. And like, I was just flipping to a channel and I heard that and I was like, let me watch this game. And they went to penalty shots against Great Britain, and he ended up shutting out 2 guys and they ended up winning. And I was just like, wow, I just watched the Wall of India pay back Great Britain for 100 years of colonization. That was pretty awesome. So gotta love the Olympics, man.
Cam?
I always love I love when a country gets their first medal. That's always like,
yeah.
my moment to like.
St. Louis, Lucius got their first one in track.
Yeah, yep.
Dominican Republic
In women's
got theirs.
weightlifting. Yeah, there were a bunch this year, so that's always fun. I like watching those. I love just the Olympic memes are always just great. Like the Turkish air pistol shooter.
Oh, the
Can't remember.
one? Yes, I heard about this. I
Like,
haven't seen it yet.
The people are acting like he's a hitman because he doesn't use glasses when he
Well,
shoots.
yeah, he didn't have all the fancy. He just kind of walked up in like a
with
jeans
his
and just pulled it out of his pocket and won the gold medal.
Yeah,
Like
which
everybody else had all this fancy gear with,
Yep, with like single focus lenses and he just is some dude off the street. That was pretty funny. Trying to think of some others. The 10K, I think it was the first time that, or was it the 15K, Drew? But the first time that the U.S. medaled in that race in, I mean, since the 70s, and I think it's only the second 51.
Grant Fisher in the 10 and the 5K had me losing my mind. Yeah.
Yes,
like
10K.
American distance running is back.
I mean, like literally, like the difference maker for Fisher was like moving to altitude because he's like fighting. I mean, he's running against Kenyans and Ugandans who are born at elevation, and
right.
I don't know, it's a difference. But pretty cool to see him crack that. I always like watching fencing too. I just think it's just like, to me, it's like of all the sports that you could have picked, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna dress up in this ridiculous outfit and
I don't think
stab somebody with a fake sword. I don't know. To me, it's just it's fun.
Well, my niece,
all the martial arts.
at our local high school, my niece lived with us for her junior year in high school, and she was a fencer. And the local high school here has some unusual sports. I think they have, some of the horse riding sports, and they also have fencing. And so I'm used to seeing fencing. My new sport for this Olympics was rugby.
Nice.
And I think I could get into rugby. I don't quite understand all the rules, but I kind of like it, and it's kind of fun to watch.
It's fun.
I don't know.
The other one, I refuse to call it a sport because I don't think it is, but breakdancing.
Oh,
I watched that event. Pretty fun. Not gonna lie.
Did you see the Australian?
Not a sport though.
Who basically finessed her way into the Olympics and received a 0. Literally did not score a single point. She was like an anthropologist who like studied the art and like this, like the history of breakdancing and the cultural, which is really cool. Like I think that's actually really cool. But literally at one point laid on the ground, like on her side, and was just like kicking her legs up in the air and received a 0. It might actually, I couldn't tell you, but like outside of a disqualification, it might be the worst Olympic performance of all time, based on the fact that like she completed a routine or whatever and scored 0 points.
So her routine was imitating a fish out of water?
Basically, yeah. I wish I was lying to you, but that's yeah. So if that can happen, I don't know how that happened. But, hey, U.S. brought home a bronze medal in it, so
wow,
baby.
So I watched every basketball game but one, and I watched most of the soccer matches, or football, if you will. And of course, FIFA screwed up soccer because it was an under 23 competition, which I'm not going to go into that, but it was stupid. But I still watched football because I like football. And lastly, golf. And golf is near and dear to my heart. Played it for most of my life. And the men's tournament was just amazing. The women's tournament was also good. But the men's final day was just crazy. So they were the 3 sports I really enjoyed. So my final thought on the Olympics is that if you missed anything, Peacock, I thought, did an amazing job of having all the events out there. So if you missed anything, they had them broken down by individual events, or if you just wanted to watch the whole night, for example, of track and field that one particular day, you could do that. And it's very well organized, very, very well, easy to find things, unlike ESPN's Plus and Hulu, where it's like, if you don't seem to watch it live, what's the point of streaming if you have to watch it live? But ESPN, in terms of replays, is just like, it can be so impossible to find something even like a day later. So kudos to Peacock, and if you miss anything, folks, you can go out there and watch it on Peacock, watch the replays. I'll probably be doing some of that tonight. All right, so we'll wrap up the Olympics and move on to our main topic of the day, which is basically off-season grades for the Eastern Conference. So what we did here is each of us, including Caleb, basically we put our individual grades here, and I haven't looked at them all, so I'm going to be kind of winging it as we go, but I guess we'll just go in alphabetical order. And so we'll talk about Atlanta, and of course, the biggest thing that happened with the Hawks was the Dyson Daniels trade, which yielded them, well, actually, it was DeJounte Murray going to New Orleans for Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, Cody Zeller. And of course, they had the number 1 pick, Richichet from France, and Nikola Dursic from, let's see, is he Serbian or Croatian? I forget. But anyway, foreign player, and I thought they got a little bit of a steal there, but he ended up getting injured in Summer League, so he is still unsigned, unfortunately for him. And so, yeah, and we all basically gave them, except for Cam, who was a little more generous than the rest, but we all basically gave them a B. So, Cam, you were the most generous to the Hawks. I think they did a good job. But what are your thoughts?
I ended up going with a B+ here just because I did that trade article at the trade deadline last year for the NBA, and I think DeJounte Murray had to be one of the hardest players to trade. And not because he's like a bad player or he's on a bad contract. Like, I think he's just a really hard player to correctly evaluate and really place like trade value on. Because I think he means more to a more defensive oriented team than he means to the Hawks. But at the same time, they gave up so much to get him in the first place. I think the big reason I went with the plus here is, I think they got a young player in Dyson Daniels who can be at least a major part of their team going forward. I don't know what his ceiling is just yet, but I think, he's somebody that could be similar to a Herb Jones, like an A1 type of wing defender who's switchable with a little bit of upside offensively. And I think, that's a player that they really needed to fit alongside Trae Young. I don't know, too. I think, it was a little bit of a mixed bag from Summer League, but I think they got the number 1 pick right. And that, I think that's probably a big part of my plus there as well.
Okay. Any thoughts to add, Drew?
Yeah, no, I agree with Cam. I'm a big Dyson Daniels guy. I think he actually, like, he's almost kind of like a really discounted Murray in the standpoint, like, you're going to get that defensive upside that you were kind of hoping Murray would bring to be that kind of running mate with Trae Young. The offense is obviously not at a DeJounte Murray level. I mean, Murray's a 20-plus point per game scorer, but you're banking on the youth. You're banking on an opportunity for him to really step into that, like, starting off-guard role. And you kind of know the defense is probably ready to translate, hopefully in a bigger setting with the Trae Young setting him up. His offense can kind of come along. You come away with those 2 first-round picks. You get the Lakers, and then it's either the Pelicans or the Bucks, I believe. So you get some picks that recuperate what you spent on Murray, which I think, is pretty good get back. I've always thought Larry Nance is a really solid rotational kind of versatile big. So he will be a guy that you can plug and play into their rotation off the rip. And then, yeah, I'm with Cam. I mean, in a draft where you didn't really, there were so many unknowns. I mean, it looks like at least between the two Frenchmen, they went with the right one based on what we saw in Summer League. And then as good as Reed looked, I do think Richiche has the upside. Like you're still looking at the build and the talent. So you're hoping, hey, that's going to hit. So I went with the B because I think, they did lose the best player. If you look at their trade and everything, they lost the better player. I think AJ Griffin's a young guy to kind of part ways with. But, I can't blame them for what they did. They did the Murray thing. I give credit when it's due. I think a lot of franchises will hold on to like star players, either trying to force it to work or waiting until they can get the absolute premium deal. I think they saw that it really wasn't going anywhere. They cut bait, were able to recuperate well, and I think they had a solid draft. So I think B is exactly where they belong.
Yeah. I think the one thing I would have liked to see, this team come away with is they really don't have. I mean, well, I suppose they could use Daniels or even Bogdanovich as their backup point guard. That's the one thing that kind of stands out on their depth chart. That I think this team's going to be competitive. It's going to be right around the play-in range. But for the long haul, I think they did give Griffin away, but they did get Daniels. So, and of course, I like their draft. So that's where I was thinking. All right, so moving on to Boston, Celtics didn't do much, but again, being the reigning world champs, or excuse me, NBA champs, I don't, they just basically their focus was keeping the core together. They didn't really add anyone of significance, except for their rookies, their draft class, which was Baylor Shireman at pick 30 and Antoine Watson at pick 54. Anton, will start on a two-way contract while Baylor's on a standard rookie contract. So just basically staying put. Admittedly, the Celtics are probably down the road are going to have some financial troubles. Their payroll is going to get really up there. But they retained everybody who matters, brought in a couple of rookies who might be able to help down the road, or maybe even sooner than later, because they're very experienced rookies. So I think you got to give them a solid grade for that. And I think the consensus was a B+ for them. So anybody have anything to add about the Celtics?
I respect the fact that they're all in. Winning championships is hard. Trying to build a dynasty is even harder. They feel that they have a group that can probably win and contend for at least the next 2 or 3 years easy. So they retained all of them. And then I think they went with rookies that are like guys that probably within the next year are going to be able to give them something. Maybe it's not right away this year, given the talent that they have, but you're like proven contributors at that college level, at a high college level. So that's where they went. So Cam kind of beat me to the punch here. We both gave them B+, and I like out in parentheses, you put retaining players. Look.
I didn't put that. That was Cam's. Right.
Yeah. So I agree 100%. You got to give them credit where it's due. They're trying to win at least probably 2 or 3 more of these things in the next 5 years, and that's what they're shooting for. And so I give them a B+.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so we'll move on to Brooklyn. Brooklyn didn't have any draft picks, but they did have some significant moves, especially due to the Mikal Bridges trade. And in that trade, the Nets acquired 5 first-round picks. So they also got Bojan Bogdanovic, Shake Milton. They managed to flip a player, Mama Diakite, to Memphis for Zaire Williams. So they brought in another player via that trade. And Bridges was about the only player that really stung losing, but this is not a team going anywhere. And so I gave them a B-, but in retrospect, I'm not so sure they shouldn't even get a little. I guess the reason I gave them a B- is because they got nothing out of the draft, but they're going to get big. If they make the right picks with those, first round picks that they got coming in. I think this was the right move because Bridges, probably his value is not going to get any higher. And by the time this team is ready to compete, where is he going to be? So I think the trade made sense for Brooklyn. And so I gave them, I guess the consensus here is B-, C+, and I was one of the B-. You have any difference of opinion here, Drew? Because you only gave him a C+, but I mean, basically same range.
I honestly went C+ because they got nothing in this draft, and I was like, for this specific offseason, not getting anything always kind of, at least our precedent has always been that kind of knocks you just a little bit if you come away with nothing in the draft. But I agree that they are set up very well for the long term. You basically were able to go get all those picks banking on the Knicks' love for the power of friendship. I think that's a pretty awesome haul. I love Bridges. Was a huge fan of him coming out of Nova. I thought Philadelphia getting rid of him was a massive mistake, proven to be true.
Right, that was a draft day trade.
So, I mean, I think that the writing's on the wall, though. He very clearly is not able. He cannot be the 1A. Like, he's not going to be the guy. So you go get this haul for him, and you get a service in Bogdanovich. You get a very serviceable player who can still go out there and contribute and put up the raw numbers that you need to not be completely irrelevant. So had they drafted
Zaire Williams, I mean, he was a high first rounder too. Or not high, but he was a first rounder, and you basically get him for nothing. So
C+, B-. I think it's more semantics at this point. I just was hard for me to give someone a B- for walking away with nothing in this current draft. But I mean, I have no qualms with you guys giving them a B-, given all the picks that they got for Bridges.
So, Cameron, we wanted to get your thoughts. You were one of the people who gave a more favorable grade to Brooklyn, and I assume that's because of the Bridges trade?
Yeah, I think I've been looking for them to make a Mikal Bridges trade since the trade deadline. He will on the market, and I always thought it should be the other way around. I thought they should trade him, and they didn't get a lot of player assets. Obviously, they got Bojan Bogdanovic. I still wouldn't be shocked if he got waived. But really, they just got such a big haul of draft assets here. I mean, we're talking 5 first-round picks, later rights to some pick swaps as well as some second-round picks. I just think, the value that they got out of Bridges was on par. And as well, like, this is a team that needs to recoup as many picks as possible. They're perfectly fine being really bad this season because they did also get their own pick back in an additional trade. Also, too, like I liked the pickup for Zaire Williams. They didn't have to pay a whole lot for him. Former first round pick from Memphis, but just another flyer pick to just sweeten up the offseason for them.
Right,
so,
and really,
I like the trade.
It was Diakite being thrown in by the Knicks that allowed them to get Zaire Williams because Memphis was doing a salary dump. So, yeah, they got another first rounder right there. So, yeah. All right. Yep. So we'll move on to the Hornets. And Cam was probably the most positive on the Hornets. And I have to ask why, because this is one of the worst teams in the league. And, they got Josh Green in part of the Klay Thompson deal. They had, Tajon Salon was their top pick at pick 6. They also got KJ Simpson at pick 42. Of course, he got injured and couldn't play in summer league, and he's going to be this year on a 2-way contract. Really, the roster doesn't change much because they're not going to get any input from the rookies this year, probably. Josh Green, yeah, nice pickup. But nothing that's gonna turn the tide for what was a really bad club last year. So everybody barely gave him a passing grade, but you, Cam, what do you see positive coming out of Charlotte?
I mean, we have to first start off with they got Taj Gibson, man. They're a playoff team now. No, yeah, I just think when you can make additions. God, I don't even know what I'm talking about. This is the Charlotte Hornets. To me, they had a competent offseason, and that deserves bonus credit. Josh Green is a really nice, really nice flyer pickup. I'm honestly
nice,
like,
nice 3-and-D guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he's somebody that I would have liked to have seen more of in the Mavericks rotation, and he kind of seemed to fall out of it towards the end of their playoff run. I don't know. I know he had to be a part of that Klay Thompson deal, but if I was the Mavericks, I would have liked to have kept Josh Green.
Agreed.
To me, the biggest thing in the draft, if you can get a guy that I feel like, personally, I feel like has the potential to be the best player in the draft in Tijan Salon,
right?
Then you're doing better.
You and I on our draft boards probably didn't disagree more on a pick than him.
Yeah.
I wasn't overly impressed. I thought he should be, probably a mid to late first rounder. You had him, I believe, 3 on your board.
Yep. And I think even after adjustments, I would have kept him probably top 5. So I was higher on him even than the Hornets were. So,
by the way, another French player who's going to be in the Olympic World Cup pipeline for France down the road.
Yeah, forever. And really too, I still think part of the reason they went with him at 6 was because they didn't want to risk losing him to San Antonio if they traded down. They had been in negotiations to do that. So, no, I really like Salon. I think that is the number one reason that I have him. And again, like, I have them in a C+. Like, it's not like I think it's an ungodly amazing draft. I think just the flyer alone on him at 6 kind of makes it for me. Plus, Josh Green, good rotation player. So
yeah. All right, so we'll move on to Chicago, and we were mostly positive on Chicago. Caleb gave them a C+, Cam and I gave them a B, and Drew was in between. So basically what Chicago did was nothing earth-shattering, but they did get Josh Giddey, sending Alex Caruso to OKC. They got Chris Duarte as part of the trade, or the sign-and trade of DeMar DeRozan from Sacramento. They signed Jalen Smith, who was had fallen down to the 3rd center on Indiana Pacers depth chart. They drafted Montas Buzelis with their only draft pick at 11. I thought that was a very nice pick. That seems to be the obvious thing. If this team wanted to go, if they could actually make any kind of a run, this, the one thing that stands out on that depth chart is, man, they don't have anybody who can play power forward. Now, Buzelis is probably not ready to make a huge impact this year, but still, I thought it was a good pick. And then, of course, they lose DeRozan to Sacramento, and they didn't really, they didn't get a lot in return, but, you usually don't in a sign and trade. Of course, they lost Caruso and they lost Andre Drummond to the Sixers. So, Drew, I know I think we've all been kind of, excuse the pun, what's the opposite of bullish in the stock market?
Is it
bearish?
Bear. Yeah. I think we've all been a bear when it comes to Chicago, thinking that they just kind of been tooling around in play-in game range for years. So you were kind of in between all of us, had the middle grade at B-. What do you think about what they did?
Yeah, I really like the Buzelis pick. I think it was good value for him. I think summer league wise, he showed a lot of reasons for optimism. His efficiency was pretty crap, but I mean, he still put up points. He was really dynamic. Like, I think he averaged almost 2 blocks and 2 steals a game. Like, he was like, so I saw like the vision, right? Like, I looked at him, I was like, okay, I totally get why you took him there. If he just can get that efficiency to uptick a little bit, he has all the tools to be like, he fits the modern, 6'9", 3-4 hybrid that you want. So I think it was a really nice pick. I mean, he's the hometown kid, which is always, a nice little story on top of that. I think Josh Giddey it's kind of an under the radar pickup. I think him and OKC it was time for them to part ways. Obviously, he had the kind of legal troubles off the court that I think really soured him there. And with all that, and I think just the way that they were building that team, his kind of preferred role of that like kind of point forward just didn't. There was no room for him there to kind of play to his strengths anymore. I think Jalen Smith is like another kind of under the radar depth big piece. Like I don't think you're a contender if Jalen Smith's absorbing big minutes for you, but I think he's totally a serviceable big. I think where I give them a B- is more, again, punishing them for just, you finally make a move. Like, I think they gave up Caruso. I think, like, they gave up DeRozan. I mean, they got some value back, but, I mean, these are trades that probably should have happened 2 years ago. Same thing. Like, they should have moved off these pieces and recouped some value when they would have probably gotten maximum value for them. Instead, I think they kind of had to settle. So I think they did give up 2 guys that are, were big pieces for them. And I don't think they got like completely swindled and taken to the cleaners, but I think they just swung too late on those deals. So I think you get a rookie who I see the vision for him. You get some nice little pieces, but I mean, at the end of the day, you bring in 4 guys to replace, DeMar DeRozan, who's your best player, and Alex Caruso, who's one of the most unheralded kind of role guys. It's not a home run, but they've needed to reset for a while now, and they're finally doing it. And they're jump starting with Buzelis, who I like. So, I think a B- is pretty solid.
Yeah. In retrospect, I'm wondering if my grade isn't a little high. I gave him a B, but because you really think DeRozan, yeah, I know sign-in trades usually don't yield a tremendous amount, but some do. And they certainly got like the minimum out of this. I mean, they got Duarte and 2 second-round picks. Woohoo!
Yeah,
Right. And I know DeRozan's, past his prime, but he's still a great scorer, still a great clutch scorer. I don't know. I think it could have gotten a little bit more. I think in retrospect, I'm going to lower that grade down to a B-. Cam, you got any thoughts on the Bulls?
Yeah, I mean, we've been wanting them to blow it up forever.
Yeah.
And they just waited too long. And so now everything that they're going to get out of this rebuild is just diminishing returns. I think, we talked about Dyson Daniels not that long ago. I would almost rather have Dyson Daniels than Josh Giddey, I think, if I was starting a full rebuild. But I mean, again, like they got Giddey, who's a former lottery talent, for Alex Caruso straight up.
Yeah, and Giddey was tremendous in the Olympics.
Yep.
So that's the Giddey that we, at least I, evaluated in the NBL and said, yeah, this guy's a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think, granted, the off the court stuff is weird and doesn't shine well on Giddey at all.
Well, yeah, but how old is Giddey himself? Like 21?
Still, he should know better. But moving beyond that, I think just talking on the court, I think OKC gave up on him a little bit too early, and the Bulls reaped the benefit of a real buy low player. So I think just for Giddey, I had to give them some points, and ultimately they got something for DeRozan, even though he was a free agent. He could have signed anywhere. So, I got to give them.
I mean, Duarte was a lottery pick 2 years ago.
Yep, and he was in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. Should he have been? Probably not, but he was in the conversation. So I don't know. I think I hate just about everything that this front office does, and I think they made some good decisions this offseason.
Yeah,
but they're still stuck with Zach LaVine and still stuck with Lonzo Ball, and have a billion questions that they probably could have answered this offseason, and they haven't done that. So
right, that's true. All right, so the Cleveland Cavaliers, man, they did about as much as the Celtics. Problem is they didn't come close to the NBA championship. Every one of us but Caleb, now remember, these are his hometown Cavaliers, gave them a D+. Caleb gave them a C. Here's what they did. They added no real free agents. Their only rookie was Jalen Tyson at pick 20. Nice pick. I thought a little early myself. And they lost Isaiah Mobley, two-way guy. His brother's probably not too happy that they haven't re-signed him. But yeah, they've never really given Isaiah Mobley a chance, which is kind of weird. But yeah, that's what the Cavaliers, basically Jalen Tyson comes in, Isaiah Mobley leaves, and that's about it. What do you think, Cam? What's going on here?
So I will say, if you were just looking at NBA media, a lot of people thought Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland would be on the move.
Right.
So I do have to give them some points for convincing their guys to try this one more time. But at the same time, I think they would have been better served moving on from one of those guys. Ultimately, I think the backcourt is too small. And I think, long term, you probably want to choose between Mobley and Allen at center. And I think, they could get real assets for any combination of those guys. They just have to make the decision of who they want to commit to. So for me, that lack of decision in that way works against them this season. I think it puts a pretty clear cap on how good they can be. I will say too, though, I think Darius Garland is going to have a huge bounce back year. So it might work out anyway. I mean, he basically was playing. I mean, dude was literally drinking through a straw for most of the season last year. So, I think they still have some upside, but I think, to really compete with the Celtics, they needed to make some fundamental changes, and they didn't do that. So I'll go with the D+. I do like Jalen Tyson, though. I think it's a good loan pick. Nice pickup.
Yeah, I thought he went about 10 picks too early, but I'm not going to gripe about that. I will say the Cavaliers, of all teams right now, Isaac Okoro is a restricted free agent. They haven't signed him. Amoni Bates, restricted free agent. They haven't re-signed him. Mobley was a free agent. Didn't bring him back. They have no one on a two-way contract right now. And I haven't heard of many Exhibit 10s. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but you look at their depth chart, and I even have Luke Travers on there because apparently he asked out of his NBL contract so he could come play for the Cavaliers, but they haven't even signed him yet. I can't believe, by the way, Luke Travers is going to play on a two-way, leave the NBL to play on a two-way. But if that's what he wants to do. Drew, you have any thoughts on the Cavs?
No, I think Cam hit the nail on the head here. I saw Jalen Tyson a lot. He's in my backyard, and I think 20 to 30 is a fine spot for him. I think he played really well in summer league and kind of showed that hybrid. I mean, they played him at point guard when he almost had that triple double, which he played awesome and he was super efficient. Obviously, they've got to figure out where they're going to play him because he's not going to have the ball in his hands when you have a Donovan Mitchell or a Caris LeVert, Donovan Mitchell, and Garland. He's not going to probably have the ball in his hands too much. So where does he kind of fit in that off-ball role? We'll see. But I don't have too many issues with the pick. I just think that they haven't done anything. The Cavs strike me as a team. The lineup they're trotting out is they're like a NBA 2K team where they're just throwing out their guys based on who has the highest overall ratings, not the actual basketball fit. On paper, Jared Allen, you're oh, he's in theory one of the better centers in the league. Same thing with Mobley, same thing with Garland, same thing. All these guys individually are really high level players, but do they fit? I think Cam's totally right that they got to make decisions on who's going to be the lead guard and who's going to be the lead big, and then you build out between whatever they decide to pillar, whoever those two pillars are out of those four. You take one of the bigs, take one of the guards, and you fill everything around them. I think they'd be better off. So I mean, I give him a D+ because you don't bring a needle mover in. You don't really lose a lot. In theory, you have the talent to supposedly compete to some degree, but you don't do anything to reinforce that. And I would have liked to see them either. I guess they're doubling down, but, I would have liked to see them maybe try to make a move and really get to that next level because we saw that they weren't ready the last 2 years, and nothing outside of maybe Garland being healthy is going to change.
Yeah, and right now their depth looks more suspect than ever. So
Exactly.
all right, so we'll move on to Detroit, who was pretty busy this offseason. One of the things they did was send Quentin Grimes to Dallas for Tim Hardaway Jr. and a bunch of second-round picks. They got Wendell Moore from Minnesota as a throw-in for a draft trade. Free agency yielded them Tobias Harris from the Sixers, Malik Beasley from the Bucks, and Paul Reed from the Sixers. In the draft, they got Ron Holland at pick 5, which pick I liked, and they got Bobby Clintman pick 37. He was a part of that 4-team trade, I believe, as well, when they moved up in the draft, I believe. And they really didn't lose anybody beside Grimes. It would probably be seen to be ultra valuable. So as a result, the grades for us range between B and B plus. Yeah, I think we're all think that Detroit is going in the right direction. What do you say, Drew?
I like the Ron Holland pick. I mean, they're stockpiling talent as bad teams do. You get a high pick, you get guys with high upside. But I think from them, it's more the free agency and existing movements that they made that had me give them. I think I went with a B. Did I go with a B or B plus? I went with a B. I mean, look, this is a team that has been absolutely stuck in the mud. And while none of these moves are going to push us into the playoffs, it is kind of nice to see. Like at some point, you have to get your young guys. You have to like have them start winning a little bit, having some success. I think loser mentality is a thing, and like that self-fulfilling prophecy of if you just suck over and over and over again, it doesn't matter the upside. Like Kate Cunningham needs to start experiencing some wins. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with Jay and Ivy, but those guys need to experience some wins. I think Hardaway and Grimes, you kind of swap them. That's more or less. I like Grimes preferably, but like, okay, Hardaway needed a change of scenery. He fell out of favor with Dallas, so maybe he can kind of pick up a more veteran role here. Like same thing with Harris. I know in Philly he was much maligned in Philly as being not being able to show up, and wasn't the Jimmy Butler should have stayed instead of him. But he is a guy that can go put up the raw numbers that will help them win a couple games. Same thing. Like, I like Paul Reed. I know he's another fan favorite in Philly. I think he's going to bring some toughness, some size. So I think they made marginal moves, but they're pushing them in the right direction. And they're showing like, hey, we're not going to completely, pull a Brooklyn and completely sell out our future to go try to win right now. We're going to keep along the timeline of these young guys, but we're going to get some veterans that can help us push us into a more competitive category. I mean, I like it, and I do like Ron Holland at 5. I think it's a good bet that, he pops and can fit there. So, I think it was a solid offseason for a team that kind of, needed a small win.
Right. Cam, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of a hard time evaluating this offseason for the Pistons because I do like the swing at Ron Holland. I'm not totally sure how he fits with their young talent.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he has maybe the highest ceiling at that point, maybe, just maybe. But also I think he's a pretty raw prospect at the same time. So I don't know. I feel like there's a possibility they could have looked into trading down, still get Ron Holland, maybe get some additional assets. I think about those things. And two, like out of like, I feel like this offseason for them was kind of like an attempt at the Rockets model of, hey, let's spend some of this cap space on some guys that can help us win now and show our younger guys how to compete and how to be pros. I think they accomplished that aspect of like some guys that have experience that can really show them the right habits and at the same time, I don't think that they spent that cap space wisely. I don't think that they got a guy like Fred VanVleet. I don't think that they got a guy like Dillon Brooks. I think they more so spent a lot of money on guys that are probably on the downhill of their careers. I think Tobias Harris is a good example of that. Love Tobias Harris. Love what he can do for a team, but I think they overpaid him by a significant amount. And that's money that's cap that they will want to use sooner rather than later, and could have used for some excuse me, more like long-term productive players as well. So I'm like right there at a B. I think they improved their team. I think honestly, I probably could have gone down to like a B minus. But I think they're moving in the direction of stability, and I think the coaching changes that they've made as well are gonna maybe help boost them back up in my eyes for this offseason. So I don't know, hard team to evaluate, but I guess I like what they did ultimately.
If Holland was a different type of player, I probably would have given him a higher grade, in the A range. But you have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, Asir Thompson, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart. Cunningham's probably the best three-point shooter out of that group, and he's not a good three-point shooter. They're all, all the wings and guards I mentioned are all drivers. And so, yeah.
And all the bigs are rim runners.
So you're really wasting the development. They already spent a year wasting the development of Jaden Ivey. And what are you going to do this year? So I think somebody has to go. Out of that group of wings, the Thompson, Holland, Ivy, Cunningham, somebody has to go. And I agree with you. I think Holland has the most upside out of that four. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. The geometry of that team just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So
right,
they got to find a way to make it make sense.
All right, so we move on to the Heat, the Pacers, and our grades range from B to C plus. So we thought they did okay, or a little better than okay. The only player that they lost, they really weren't using, take that back. The only player they really free agent they gained was James Wiseman, who really wasn't getting any playing time in Detroit. They didn't pay a lot of money for him. So the draft brought them 3 picks, Johnny Furphy at 35, Tristan Newton at 49, and Enrique Freeman at 50. The latter two are going to be on 2-way contracts this year. And they didn't really lose much. Doug McDermott and the aforementioned Jalen Smith. So most of us were giving them a so-so grade. I was trying to think who gave them the highest. Caleb did. Caleb liked them the most. I was second most. So what are your thoughts, Cam?
I just don't. There's not a lot to. I mean, frankly, there's not a lot here. I mean, you're moving off of Jalen Smith to sign James Wiseman, maybe a little cheaper contract. I don't know what Smith ended up getting from the Bulls, but
it's definitely honestly, cheaper because Wiseman is only guaranteed for a small amount.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, basically a salary dump for a bottom of rotation big. I think ultimately they like Toppin more than Smith. So I mean, a pretty fringe move there. I think Johnny Furphy looked better in summer league than I expected, but I still don't love that pick. I never really looked at him as a first rounder.
Well, he wasn't. He wasn't.
He's still, but he was on the fringe.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I agree. I thought most draft experts were way overrating Johnny Furphy.
Yeah, I think he would have been. I would venture to guess he was in the first round in over 50% of draft boards. We didn't have that. I don't know. I think they didn't have a whole lot of moves to make. Ultimately, I think their biggest thing was re-signing Siakam, which I probably didn't account for as much with my C plus, because that is huge. They spent a lot to get him. But again, they already kind of knew what was going to happen with that contract. I don't know. I would have liked to see, a little bit more effort to maybe add an additional wing. And they didn't really go after anybody. So I don't know. I think they they did their homework, but they didn't try that hard.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think they thought we have all the pieces. We did really well last year. All we have to do is, sign Siakam, and everybody else is young and coming along. And I think they think they're already, one of the best teams in the East. And so there wasn't much to do there. I mean, you got to remember Ben Mathurin didn't play in the playoffs. He'll be back this year. So, Drew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally agree. I think this was one of the more just like non-factor off seasons. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I think for them, they were more worried about locking up Nemhard. They were more about locking up Siakam. They did all that. They're running it back. I was going to say Ben Mathurin not playing was something I think people like kind of overlooked. He was awesome as a rookie, or had awesome moments as a rookie, and wasn't there when they in the playoffs he was hurt. I think I'm not a Johnny Furby guy at all, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't have been any interested in drafting him. I don't think 35 is like a bad spot to take him. I have no interest in him, so I'm like, that pick's a non-factor to me. I mean, I love Tristan Newton in college. I do wonder, like, where does that really fit? Like, you have Halliburton, you have Nemhard,
You have McDonald.
Like Tristan Newton is at best going to be the third point guard in that rotation if he absolutely pops.
Or McConnell, I mean McDonald. TJ McConnell, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that pick to me, it's like, I really like him. I like the intangibles, but I don't think he's a needle mover whatsoever because you just don't need him. Enrique Freeman's an intriguing pick. I think at 50, it's good value. You get a really productive college player. And, I think that's what that second round's for, is finding those guys who played at the smaller schools but were super productive and seeing if they pop. And then, I mean, as a spurned Warriors fan, I mean, James Wiseman it's all there when you look at him, but, he just can't seem to put it together. But, I mean, for a team that's pretty locked into what their rotation is going to be and what they have, I think he's worth the flyer of, if you can get 75% of what we thought he could be out of him, you got yourself a usable, solid big with all the intangibles. So I gave him a C+. I think that, like, C+, B-, it's all kind of, like, it's another one of those, like, semantics. It's all pretty much the same. They had a very even keel offseason.
Right. In terms of the Heat, the next team, we were all pretty much in agreement here. 3 of us gave B-, 1 C+. That was Cam. And, again, another team that didn't do a lot except for the draft. But they really did make some interesting moves that I think are worth noting because they are the Miami Heat. So they gained Alex Burks in free agency, but they also, Josh Christopher, for those who remember, was in the league a few years back, and now he is back in the league on a 2-way contract for the Heat. He was a star in Summer League. Then in the draft, they added Khalil Ware, who looked very good in Summer League, Pelle Larson, who looked good in Summer League, and Keyshawn Johnson from San Diego State, another rookie free agent who they signed to a 2-way contract. He also looked solid in Summer League. So in terms of what they lost is they didn't re-sign Patty Mills or Alondas Williams, who was a 2-way guy. And their biggest loss was Caleb Martin, who moved on to Philadelphia. But if memory serves me correctly, Caleb missed a ton of time last year and really didn't factor into the equation too much for the Heat. But I think still, I mean, he's a significant loss. I think the way I'm looking at it is, the Heat are doing what the Heat do. They make good draft picks. They very smart with the flyers they take in free agency and the 2-way contracts, and a lot of those guys pay off. And so I gave him a B- because team really hasn't changed a lot on the surface. But yeah, I think they were mostly positive moves. Drew, do you agree?
Yeah, my B- comes from, I think they did really, really well in the draft. I think they're, Alex Burke and Josh Christopher aren't really major needle movers. I think they're total Heat pickups, guys that they can get in and they'll find a way to milk out every last bit of basketball that they can from them. But I mean, the Heat are the type of guys where Josh Christopher is going to come in and have a game in the playoffs where he goes for 30 out of nowhere and like wins them a game on the road, and we're all going to be like, oh, Spoelstra does it again. I mean, that's what Caleb Martin was. I mean, I don't think it's a big loss. I think a lot of people, obviously, that run he had, specifically against the Celtics a couple years ago, people think so highly of. But like, if you go back and look, he's like a career 8 point per game scorer. He's an okay shooter. He's a good shooter. He's not a great shooter.
But
He's
in
an
college,
okay.
he was a bucket getter.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, like he's a career like 36% 3 point shooter, so he's solid, but it's not like he's elite. He doesn't, it's not like he doesn't do anything crazy. I don't think that they replaced him, I think, as well as they could. I just really like the draft. I think Ware, I got to see him live, was awesome, super dynamic. Pele Larson's one of those guys where I think he's in the perfect spot for him, where they'll use him exactly how they need to. He could never really step up and be the guy at Arizona, but he was able to do he's kind of like that. He's a B player at everything. He's not a terrible defender. He can score a little bit. He can pass. He can rebound. And that's what the Heat need. They're not going to ask him to go be the alpha. And, Keyshawn Johnson's a total Heat culture guy. I think Caleb might have mentioned it last time. He's just the perfect Heat culture dude.
It was Jake. It was Jake.
Or Jake mentioned it. He's going to rebound. He's going to defend. He's going to do all the small things that you need, that the Heat want. They got him as a free agent. They didn't have to expend a pick on him. So, that's where I gave it a B-
And
from.
he's one of the more athletic forwards in this.
Exactly. He fits to a T what they want. And like when you look at the guys they drafted, Keyshawn Johnson's a college veteran, Pele Larson's a college veteran, and Cale Ware still was a 2-year player who improved significantly and really showed. So that's where I give him a B-. I think they got really good value in the draft, and I am full of faith that they're going to make Burks and Christopher. They will get those guys ready to replace Caleb Martin.
Right.
When it matters.
Cam, you have anything to add?
I was probably lowest out of all of us. I think that their window is closing pretty quickly.
Agreed.
Would have liked to have seen this pick maybe get traded. Would have maybe liked to have seen a different position get drafted. Maybe look at somebody like Connect or De Silva instead of Khalil Ware. I like what I saw from him in summer league, and I think getting a little bit bigger is probably the right idea for the Heat long term, but I just wanted to see them get a little bit more aggressive trying to make some changes.
Yeah, I didn't go crazy on my grading. I liked what they did, but when you look at what's behind Rozier at point guard, Hero, at guard, and Jimmy Butler, on the wing, you just, nothing's inspiring. And so this team could have depth issues again. Of course, Rozier, Josh Richardson all didn't play in, last year's playoffs. So, but yeah, you really have to wonder, it's going to have to be a team effort, for Miami, and a defensive effort. But man, you look at the guys they now have in the front court with Jovic and Jaquez and Bam and now Ware. Those really some nice front court pieces, but it's the rest of the team that looks thin. The next team up is Milwaukee Bucks. We collectively did not like their draft. And what they did, though, I think they made some nice moves in free agency. Specifically, they got Gary Trent Jr. from the Raptors. Well, he was a free agent, and they got him pretty cheap. They got Taurean Prince, played for the Lakers. Falon Wright from the Wizards. Also, Ryan Rollins came over from the Wizards, and they signed him to a 2-way contract. He looked really good in summer league. Former Golden State guy there. And of course, the draft was AJ Johnson at pick 23, Tyler Smith at pick 33. We talked about their draft a lot when we gave out our draft grades, and we weren't too high on those guys because we said they weren't ready to contribute on a team that needed people to contribute. Now, who they lost was through free agency was Malik Beasley, who I believe led the NBA in 3-point percentage, Jay Crowder, and Danilo Gallinari, who I believe didn't play hardly at all for the Bucks, but I don't think Crowder played a hell of a lot either. But in terms of grades, we gave them 1 C+, 2 Cs, and 1 C-. Cam, what are your thoughts on what the Bucks are doing?
God, ultimately, it's hard. I think in one way, like I didn't love their draft, but in the other, I think reaching for a guy like AJ was a really smart move for them. I think just to get just a little bit of variance in like, oh, this young kid might have a lot of potential. He might be a little bit far down the line, but
But they took
I
two
think
of those guys
they
very
did.
close
Yeah,
together.
I think Johnson in particular, though, I think he looks a little bit further ahead. Um, obviously, wild swings in both directions. Like he had some really great summer league games, and he had some pretty awful summer league games, and I think that's just what we're going to see from him. Um, I don't know. I think they needed to get some competent depth, and in the draft, I think they're less so. They're maybe more on like the opposite end of the spectrum of like Denver, where Denver's just like, if this guy can be a rotation player, awesome. They're more along the lines of like, we got to take a swing at some transformational talent, um, because our guys are getting older. And I think,
That's fine, but they have Giannis, and everyone expects them to be in contention for the NBA title.
but I mean, you look outside of Giannis, and Dame's getting older.
Yep.
Chris Middleton had 2 surgeries this offseason.
Right. And
Brooke Lopez is quite
right.
a bit older.
Right.
So I think, I think they replaced some of their depth. I think, DeLon Wright's a solid player. Taurean Prince is a solid player. Gary Trent Jr., kind of a tough contract, but also a pretty solid NBA player. I think they've got potential there with AJ Johnson, Tyler Smith. That's why I ended up going with a C+. I think what they came out of this offseason with is better than what they went in with, which was, 20 minutes of Danilo Gallinari on the season, something like that. Malik Beasley couldn't stay on the court consistently because of his defense, and Jay Crowder couldn't stay on the court consistently because of his offense. I think they've got, 3 rotation guys that can play and a couple of rookies who could be something in a year or two.
Yep. I agree there. I definitely think, Trent is an upgrade over Beasley. I think Prince is an upgrade over, Crowder. And DeLon Wright, a cheap but effective 3-and-D guy. So, yeah, but is it enough to win an NBA championship? All those starters are going to have to stay healthy. And they probably won't, and there's nobody coming off the bench that can really. There is no like, some teams have like, 2 or 3 guys that could be starters for other teams. The Bucks don't.
Yeah. I will say too, like just for the Bucks in general, like they're going to have a much more put together season. But again, like you said, the injuries are a real threat for them. But I mean, they're coming into the year with a full off season with a consistent coaching staff. They're coming in with, Dame not coming directly off of some pretty serious personal issues in terms of his divorce. And again, like another year in the same place for Damian Lillard. So I've got high hopes for the Bucks. I don't think they're done yet, but I think they're really close to being done.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Drew, you have anything to add?
I gave them a C. Didn't love their draft. Thought they were all right in free agency. Boils out to a C for me. 3 contributors that I think can help them out now. A guy in Ryan Rollins that we'll see. And then AJ Johnson, Tyler Smith don't love it for a team that's supposedly in contention. So I think it's just an baseline average postseason or preseason.
Right. So now we'll move on to the Knicks, and probably no team was more busy than the New York Knicks. If you count the trades and the draft moves, oh my God, on draft day, they were swapping all over the place. I mean, really, I had to sit down and just like think about, okay, what did they actually do here? Because they swap multiple picks multiple times. It was pretty crazy. But let's boil it down. They got the Mikal Bridges trade, which we talked about when we talked about Brooklyn. And as a part of that, they got Keita Bates Diop. They also signed Cameron Payne from the Sixers to be a backup point guard. In the draft, they came away with 4 picks, including Pacome Dadier, another French player at pick 25, Tyler Kolek, the outstanding point guard from Marquette at 34, Kevin McClure, pick 56. He is currently injured and will be on a 2-way this year. And Ariel Huckporty, a big center, played from Germany, played in Australia at pick 58. He too will be on a 2-way contract. Then what did they lose? They lost Bogdanovich, which we talked about. He went to Brooklyn with Shake Milton. They didn't re-sign Alec Burks, who went to Miami, and Isaiah Hartenstein, which was probably the big loss. Their center, who plays as much minutes as the starter, Mitchell Robinson, and one could argue is a better player than Mitchell Robinson. And he went to OKC via free agency. So all in all, when we all added it up, I was the only one not to give them an A. I said A minus. Harsh, and I'd say my biggest worry is how much they gave up for Bridges in the long run. Not for this year. I think this team is going to be right up there in the mix to represent the East in the NBA Finals. But yeah, it's what losing all those picks to Brooklyn is going to turn out to be. So what do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I think they kind of sense the moment. I've been making this joke all offseason, but like, hey, they're banking on the power of friendship and like a chemistry that, to be honest, I don't think we've ever seen in the NBA before. Like, I mean, literally rebuilt an incredibly successful college team. They have rebuilt it and are banking on it and translating to the NBA. And I mean, with DiVincenzo, Hart, and why am I drawing a blank? And Brunson, they were super successful. I mean, compared to where the Knicks have been, they feel Bridges is the missing piece. I can't blame them for pushing the chips in. We'll see. I think their draft, I mean, I don't think they came away with anybody who's going to be like now I'm not too familiar with the international guys that they drafted, but while they might not have come away with a guy who might be generational, I think they did get a good haul and kind of a bunch of different guys that check a bunch of different boxes. And I mean, look, the 2 big losses were Bogdanovich, but you replaced him with Bridges, who's better. And then, I mean, Hartenstein, where again, he's been such a darling for the advanced analytics, and I do think he's really good, but I think they're just banking on Mitchell. If he can stay healthy and just, block shots and rebound, everything else will be taken care of by the rest of the roster. So I gave him an A because I got to give credit where it's due. I think they're trying to push for a championship. And I mean, the Celtics, they're like, hey, maybe they're an injury away. Maybe a Porzingis can't stay healthy and he's out. They probably feel like they're right in the mix to be that number 2 team. And I mean, we'll see how it plays out. And if any of these rookies, particularly like McCullough and Kolek, can kind of figure it out, being the more veteran guys, and can maybe give them anything, I mean, I think they'll be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I suspect Kolek will see a lot of minutes.
Absolutely.
As you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays more than Cameron Payne. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
They also have Miles McBride, who you could argue is more of a shooting guard. But yeah, so they got plenty of options behind Brunson. Cam, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I was right there between an A minus. I agree with you on, the Bridges trade. Like, that's a lot of pick assets. At the same time, they need to invest in the team that they have. I don't think they have a whole lot of talent coming down the pipeline in spite of all those picks. I think they have a pretty specific window to compete with Boston. And I think Bridges is exactly the type of player that they needed. My only big question still is, where does Julius Randle fit in with this team?
He doesn't really. I would think he would come off the bench as like a
I was going to say he should be their 6th man, but
yeah. So I mean, I probably like Randall more than most, but I don't think he particularly fits this roster well. I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen him moved this offseason. Granted, they're probably not going to get a whole lot back for him, just given his value around the league. But for that to be the one question mark that really stands out to me, I think they had a pretty solid offseason. Getting Bridges is great. Losing Hartenstein, it's tough, but they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think if Randall, if he played or if he didn't play, I don't know if that would equate to many more wins. Assuming people like Anunoby can stay healthy. But yeah. All right. So we'll move on to Orlando, who they were pretty quiet too. But again, like the Pacers, they had a lot of their pieces already locked up. But they did make one big signing and bringing in free agent Kentavious Caldwell-Pope from Denver. They also brought in Corey Joseph from Golden State. Their one draft pick at number 18, they drafted the aforementioned Tristan da Silva. Players lost so far are players they lost were Markelle Fultz, who is yet to be signed, still a free agent, and Joe Ingles, who signed with Minnesota as a free agent. So our draft grades, they range from a B to an A minus. Drew, you gave them the A minus. Cam, Drew gave them the highest grade. Cam, you gave them the lowest grade. Drew, what are you thinking?
I just think very highly of the KCP pick. This is like all this telltale signs of like you have a really young team that's kind of on that precipice, and you go get them a veteran who has won now multiple championships, has played a bunch of different roles from back when he was with Detroit, where he was kind of more of one of the guys, to where he was with Denver, where he was kind of a more 3-and-D role player. I think it's a really good pickup for them. I just think this roster is pretty deep, particularly along those kind of guards and wings. I mean, you've got Suggs, KCP, Cole Anthony Black. I mean, Corey Joseph is a guy that can probably soak up some minutes here or there sporadically if you need be. Franz Wagner is on the wing for him. Banchero is ascending. I just think this team is very, very deep. I think KCP is exactly the type of guy they need, more so just for the leadership. Obviously, he's going to help them from a basketball standpoint, I believe, but I think the leadership is really big. I like Da Silva a lot. I think he's going to be a guy that, he's going to have to fight for minutes just because of the depth, but I think he definitely has the skill set and the experience that if he has to get in there, he might surprise some people. I think his offensive game is going to be a nice kind of boost if they need him. When they lost Joe Ingles, I was kind of like, he's one of those guys that he does a lot of unsung hero type things. And I thought, hey, they might miss him more than people think. But I think KCP alleviated all that stress for me, and KCP is better. So I was like, oh, perfect. The biggest loss that they probably had, they've remedied and improved. I think this is a team that just honestly got that playoff taste. They'll mature naturally. And they added a guy who can be a locker room leader and give them an experience, like an on the court boost. So I think for a team that was kind of set in their lineup, they made great moves that fit exactly what they need.
Okay. So Cam, you liked what they did, but you liked it, at least in terms of grading, the least of us. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Drew. I really like Da Silva. I think he was a smart pick. I think kind of making up in a lot of ways for maybe where they went wrong with Jet Howard. I think he's more so the prospect that they were looking for with that pick. So I like their draft. I'm a Nuggets fan. I love KCP. I gotta be honest though, I kind of thought he was a little bit over the hill even when he was traded to the Wizards in the first place, like kind of after his Lakers run. They're paying him pretty significant money. And I could see that coming back to bite them probably next season. I think he's got one more really solid year in him, one more playoff run, especially with some reduced minutes. But they committed some pretty serious money to him. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, not a huge number. But it could be, something they have to pay to get off of down the road. I think that was probably the biggest difference maker for me. Also, I love Markelle Fultz as a backup point guard. I think like honestly, I'm still kind of shocked that he hasn't gotten signed. Probably because he's kind of in that weird spot where he's probably worth more than the minimum, but he's probably only available for the minimum. But I think, losing Fultz, kind of like sneakily a big part of their locker room. I think a veteran presence in Orlando. So I don't know, another loss could still come back. Who knows? But
apparently
I
the
don't know,
Lakers.
those are some of the things I thought about.
Apparently the Lakers are looking into Fultz. Don't know if they can swing it, but all right. So we'll move on to the Sixers, another very busy team. They added Paul George, Andre Drummond, Caleb Martin, Eric Gordon, and Reggie Jackson, all via free agency. And in the draft, they added Jared McCain at pick 16, Adem Bona at pick 41, and also two interesting two-way guys who were undrafted free agents in Justin Edwards and David Jones, two guys who were pretty high on our draft board in second-round range for us. Of course, they lost a ton, too, because they basically cleaned house. They losing Tobias Harris, Paul Reed, Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, Mohamed Bamba, and Cam Payne, all via free agency, though. Well, Hield was actually a part of a sign and a trade, part of the Klay Thompson deal, but they weren't going to resign him. So, all right. So, and in terms of grades, we got 2 A's and 2 A minuses. I personally... Sixers, my team, obviously I like what they've done, but I just don't know if they're still going to be anything better than the third or fourth best team in the East. They got a lot of new pieces to get to work together. So Cam, what are your thoughts?
So a couple things for me. Yes, they cleaned house. Yes, they got Paul George. I mean, I have to give them something in the A range for adding somebody that's an all-star caliber player, especially replacing Tobias Harris. I just have to. But at the same time, I don't love a lot of what they got this offseason in sort of the margins, right? Like, if I was a GM, I wouldn't touch Eric Gordon with a 10-foot pole. Like, I'm good. Honestly, same thing with Reggie Jackson. Like, just not my type of player. And honestly, like a couple of guys with skill sets that I don't think they really need, given their roster. I thought that like a lot of people have different thoughts on Jared McCain. I don't think he can really play with Tyrese Maxey. And they just committed long-term money to Tyrese Maxey. They're going to need a backup shooting guard. I don't love that pick, especially when they could have gone with somebody like Connect, who would fit with the team and would be ready right now.
Yep.
I don't know. I think those are some of the big things that really stand out to me. And then too, like, even a guy like Batum, it's like, why can you not commit a couple $1 million to him?
He didn't want to be in Philadelphia. He wanted to be in LA where his family is.
I get that, he could have moved his family. I don't know. I know he went back to the Clippers, but that's a guy that they could have pursued a little bit harder to keep. I think the same thing even with Paul Reed. I think Drummond's a nice pickup, really great offensive rebounder. He's going to help back up Embiid, but Reed's a good player too, and probably come in at a similar, if not cheaper, number. Ultimately, I think they left some value at the negotiating table, I thought.
Yeah, I'm not really thrilled with the Sixers bench at this point in time. If they start Lowry, and Maxey, Oubre, George, and Embiid, okay. But then, coming off the bench, but the only person I'm probably, I think Drummond's solid, and I think Bona could also, contribute as a rookie. And I like Khalid Martin, but yeah, that's where it stops. How about you, Drew? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean Cam kind of was spot on. I mean, I gave him an A. I was between A and A minus. A large portion of that is what they got Paul George. He kind of I think it sounds like he kind of fell into their lap. It sounded like, the Clippers had a spite, didn't want to send him to Golden State. So, the Sixers were able to clean up, and I mean, it boils down to like we found out Paul George couldn't be the number one. He wasn't really able to be the number two. Can he be the number three on a team that's got Embiid and Mac? If he can be the number three, on paper, you're going, okay, that's a big three that a lot of teams aren't going to be able to trot out. He's getting up there. So, I mean, does he have enough in the tank for another push? We'll see. I do like Andre Drummond. I mean, again, I think ideally I would have tried to keep Reed because he might have been able to get him cheaper. But, I mean, look, you got to back him in Embiid because you know he's going to miss time. And I think the combination of Drummond and Bona is going to work, and they're going to be able to make that work when Embiid misses those inevitable, 15 games this year. I think Martin's like a fine pickup as a depth piece. I think if you think you're going to get Miami Caleb Martin, you're probably kind of tricking yourself. Again, I think that's a place that maximizes talent, but as a guy who can come in, shoot the ball a little bit, rebound a little bit, he'll work fine. I do agree. Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon are throwaways to me. I didn't really take them into evaluation. McCain, I mean, the big question mark is how quickly does the shooting translate? That was obviously his biggest selling point. He didn't shoot the ball great in Summer League. If the shot is falling, I think you can find a way to have him play alongside a Maxey, just because, I mean, he can shoot. If it's not, it gets a lot more questionable, and then you start raising the red flags of, man, with the 16th pick, did we maybe take a guy that isn't going to be able to contribute night in and night out? Like Cam said, when you had a Dalton Connect that was probably ready-made and ready to go. So the A mostly comes from they got Paul George, and we're about to find out this is it. Like if this doesn't work, then Paul George, then it's never going to, based on his age and based on the fact that you can't even be the third guy on a championship contending team. So I can totally be swayed to an A minus. In fact, honestly, the more I talk about it, the more I'm probably in an A minus category. But I mean, we'll see. This is kind of it. If this doesn't work, then I think you start having really uncomfortable conversations in Philadelphia, because at what point now is it, can you get to an Eastern Conference Finals with Embiid as the guy? He hasn't even gotten there yet. So this might be kind of in that almost last hurrah area. So I'll give them credit for swinging as big as they could and go and getting a guy that they, on paper, should be enough to get him over the hump.
All right. We'll move on to the Raptors and their big addition outside the draft was Davion Mitchell, former top 10 pick a couple years ago, and he was acquired for Sacramento as they were desperately trying to make room for DeMar DeRozan. So they not only did they get Mitchell, they got Jamal Shed, the 45th pick in the draft, plus a second rounder, Portland's second rounder this coming draft. And the only thing they gave up was Jalen McDaniels. In the draft, they got Jacoby Walter at pick 19. I think basically as a group, we thought that was a steal. They got Jonathan Mogbo at pick 31, and then they got Shed at 45, and then they got Ulrich Kamchi at pick 57. He will be on a two-way contract this year. And of course, their big loss was Gary Trent not resigning and signing with the Bucks. So grade-wise, we're all about the same. We got 2 Bs, 2 B pluses. Drew, I look at their depth chart and I see a lot of talent. This is kind of like where we said Orlando was, a couple years ago. I see a lot of talent, but it's time for some of these guys to get going here. But you really could picture in your mind where this team could be very competitive.
Yeah, that's why I was at a B plus. I think I look at the paper and I'm like, man, this should work. All the guys they added are guys that are projected to be on the margins, at least right now. They're all rookies, or it's Davion Mitchell who's better suited as kind of coming off the bench. I do think Mitchell and Shed do a lot of the same things. So
they do.
That's kind of a redundant pick. I love Jamal Shed as a college basketball enthusiast. I'm happy to see him get drafted. I'm happy to see him go to a place where he should hopefully be able to try to fight for minutes at some point, whether that's on the G League roster, if he gets called up. I think Jacoby Walter was a big steal at 19. I thought he was a guy I could have seen definitely a lottery guy. So 19 is good value there. Mogbo is an interesting pick. He's kind of more in that vein of it's the same questions you have with like the Draymond Greens of the world. Like, where does he fit in with his size? He doesn't have a great offensive game as a scorer, but high energy rebounder. I see the blueprint for him being a really effective defender, and he does have guard skills, which, being a good kind of forward passer always has value. So I went B plus again, B plus. I don't think there's a wrong answer there. I think, losing Gary Trent, he's a really solid guy in the margins, but they're kind of in that youth movement moment now. Clear some way. I want to see Jacoby Walter get minutes. Trent's in the way of that, so I'm on board. I do agree that they got to figure out this rotation because they're almost like too deep. Like you have guys like, Grady Dick was a lottery pick for them, and he's like listed as third as their small forwards. Like, where does he fit in on this equation? Like Jacoby Walter is, him and Jacoby Walter have to figure things out. Like,
who was, I believe, a former lottery pick.
Exactly. So I'm like, it looks like their projected lineup is quickly at the 1, Dick, Barrett at the 3, Barnes at the 4, Jakob at the 5. I like the lineup. It doesn't scream super talented. It's the depth where you're like now, but then you have Olynyk, then you have Abadi, then you have Brown, then Walter, then Mitchell. So they're super deep. It's gonna be very interesting to see what the starting that opening night what the lineup is, what the halfway through the season starting lineup looks like. But I gave them a B plus because I think they did well in the draft overall. I don't think they lost too much, and I think Mitchell is a fine piece to have on a roster as kind of a heart and soul second string guard.
Yep. All right. I think we may have lost Cam, who was in transit, so we may have to do the Washington Wizards all by ourselves, Drew. All right, so the Wizards, what do they got? Their new players are Jonas Valanciunas, who they got from New Orleans to help bring along their top pick in the draft. Alexander Sarr from France. They got Sadiq Bey, who's still recovering from a serious season-ending injury. So if he plays, probably not going to be till maybe the All-Star break. And they also got Malcolm Brogdon in the Denny Avdia trade, which I thought was a really great move for Washington, because not only did they get Brogdon for Avdia, they got the pick 14, which turned into Carlton Carrington, and then they get a choice of the Celtics, Trailblazers, or Bucks 29th first rounder, whichever is the second most favorable. And they get the Warriors 2028 second round pick and the Blazers 2030 second round pick, all for Denny Avdia. Hello. Yeah. I think the Blazers lost out on that one. So in the draft, they got Sarr at 2, Carrington at 14, and Keyshawn George at 24. Personally, I thought that Sarr I think the pick I liked the least was George. I just didn't see him as a first rounder, more like in that Johnny Furphy range that we had him in, which was, early second round. Now, they did lose, beside Avdia, they did lose Tyus Jones, gave him away in free agency. He ended up in Phoenix. DeLon Wright, another backup guard, signed with Milwaukee, and Ryan Rollins, another point guard, who was on a two-way with Washington, is now on a two-way with Milwaukee. So in terms of grades, the grades range from A, Drew gave him an A, Cam gave him an A, to B plus for Caleb. And Caleb put in his comment here is he's just not high enough for Sarr to give them an A for this draft. Now, based on Summer League, I don't blame him, but we got to remember Sarr is only 19 years old. I think the problem I have with Sarr is just another guy, another big that wants to play like a guard, and he's got to get out of the habit.
Not everybody's Kevin Durant.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Rich. Like, to me, a big part of this was that trade. I think they absolutely swindled Portland for Denny. Like, Brogdon is the perfect guy to bring into a team like this. Like I said, for KCP, he's a guy who's going to come in. He's if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a stabilizing presence. I mean, that's the big if with him. That's why Boston moved off of him, because on paper it worked. It was a perfect match on paper. Couldn't stay healthy, so hopefully he can here. He'll be able to be a stabilizer for them. Valanciunas is an awesome center, like a super underrated center in my opinion. He's a nightly double-double guy. He gives them stability there. Saddiq Bey is interesting. I know he has the injury. It boils down to, like, if he can get back to that very short stint he had, like that Atlanta, like when he first got to Atlanta, in that 20, like, he was shooting the piss out of the ball. He was scoring at a great clip. He was rebounding. He obviously wasn't great this last year, but he was injured and his efficiency kind of waned, and he was not good from three. So, like, what they get out of him is it's a kind of a nice, like, hey, it's a kind of a low risk, high reward move. If he pops, you get yourself an awesome small forward who can stretch the floor, score the ball, rebound a little bit. If he doesn't,
team-oriented player, puts a lot of energy in the defending.
I really like the move. It's if it pops, awesome. If it doesn't, okay, it's what it is. I'm also not a big Sarr guy, but again, I'm not going to sit there. Summer League has deceived me one too many times in the past, so I won't make my judgments on that. I can totally get where Caleb's coming from, just in general, not being super high on this draft as a whole. Carrington looked awesome in Summer League, though, so I mean, we'll see. And then George,
I mean, one pick looked like a brilliant move. The other pick looked like the worst pick of all time.
Exactly. So I think the reality of it is somewhere in the middle. George, I agree, probably a little bit too high, but hey, he's one of those guys where in this type of draft, if you like somebody, especially in that like 20 to 40 range, you kind of have to take them because you don't know where everybody else's head's at, because in this draft, everybody was so tight that it's like, if they really like him, and I had him, I think we had him in like the mid 30s, maybe.
I think so.
Somewhere 30, 40 range.
Maybe early 40s.
So it's like, it's a reach, but if you really like him and did your due diligence on him, there is no guarantee that that he's not there later. So you had to take him there. You lose Jones, you lose Wright, who are two really, really solid second unit guards, but you get Brogdon, who is better than both of them. If he can stay healthy, so I can abide that. I think Denny has more to offer, more in the tank, but for the trade, you had to do it. Like, that was a no-brainer. Like, yeah, Denny you think has more to give, but you get such a great deal that you had to take him.
Well,
and then again, Ryan Rollins.
Washington got a lot more for Denny Avdia than the Bulls did for DeMar DeRozan.
So exactly. So I'm like, that was a no-brainer. So I gave them a very solid A. I know this is a team that we've been picking on, as the league has for a while now, but they got guys who are going to make them better right now in Brogdon and Valanciunas. They got a guy in Bay who, if he pops, is going to make them better. And even if he isn't 100%, he's still a great team guy to have for the things he does away from scoring and shooting. I think their draft looks like it's going to be, on paper, it's going to be okay. Like, it doesn't look like they completely bungled it, because even if Sarr doesn't work out, it looks like Carrington is going to be solid. Again, this is projections based on Summer League, so I say this all with a grain of salt. And I don't think they didn't lose anything that they didn't replace or get really good value for. So got to give them an A.
Yeah, I agree. I think generally the only thing that worries, as you said, Sarr, he's got to be better, and I don't think they're going to get a lot out of him this year. But they got Valanciunas to hopefully teach him how to play like a big, which is lacking in his game. All right. So, folks, I want to remind you, if you would like to send us a question for our mailbag, please email it to admin@hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions via social media on Twitter @hoopsprospects, on Instagram @thehoopsprospects, and on Facebook @hoopspros. I want to thank everyone for tuning in this week. If you ever miss an episode, you can always get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. And we will be back later this week to hand out our offseason grades in the Western Conference. And we will also have as a guest the reigning Ivy League Player of the Year, Cade Pierce. So that's exciting. May even have we during our little mini summer break, we also reached out to a couple other people who might join the show. We'll see. But yeah, it's that time to almost start talking college basketball. So, any final thoughts, Drew?
No, super excited for basketball to be back. As everyone who listens knows, I prefer college to the NBA. So I had to go back and do my homework on some of these guys because there's players I'm like, yeah, that guy's a good player. And I look back and I'm like, oh, he was a good player 4 years ago. So I had to do my homework on some guys. So I'm glad Cam was here because I know Cam, I trust Cam very much when it comes to talking
Cam's
NBA
more
stuff.
an NBA guy. You and I are more college guys.
So I'm glad Cam was here. I know he wasn't able to wrap up with us, so I'm excited.
Did you notice as he was leaving the school, he had his phone. He still had us in the Zoom meeting on his phone, and he was walking out in the sunshine because it's still out west. It's the sun's still up, and he had those shades on. I'm telling you, we got to put that video together in slow motion. You know, him just walking out of the office.
But no, I'm glad we're back. I'm looking forward to talking about the West and my Warriors. That's the one team I am super plugged into. So,
yeah, I think we gave a lot of bad grades in the West. If I'm not,
yeah, no, I probably handed out more. I definitely handed out more D's. I think part of that's just the pressure of it. You know, like the West is competitive, so you got to do a lot more. Like Washington, I gave an A, and I expect them not to probably make the playoffs, but I still give them an A. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. So we'll see you in a few days, folks.